Continuing here with our review, we have exercice C, using the expression il faut plus infinitive or noun to write about what is needed in the following situation. So they give you a situation right here. It's always going to be some sort of an infinitive verb. Okay, so it's in order to. That's what pour means, in order to. In order to do this, what do you need? So you essentially want to copy paste the il faut down for every single one of these. Make sure to spell it correctly. It's not il fait with a T, it's il faut. It is necessary. That's the first step. That's half the battle. Then the second half of the battle is deciding if you want to use an infinitive or a noun after it. You can use either or, it doesn't matter. You don't need to do both. If you are going to use an infinitive, for example, make sure that you vary your infinitives. Don't use the same infinitive over 2 times. So, for example, number 1, pour réussir aux examens difficiles, in order to succeed on difficult exams, an infinitive, a verb, an action that you might need to take would be to study. Il faut étudier. Okay, that would be one option. Notice that it's an infinitive, it's not conjugated. And I have not used je. It's il faut, not je. Or if you were going to use an object, what's necessary to succeed? Maybe you need a book. Il faut. You don't need to say to have a book. You can just say un livre, a book. Okay, so that's my infinitive or using an article noun. For example, number 2, pour avoir beaucoup d'amis, to have a lot of friends. Il faut, what would be the verb? Maybe you need to be nice. So to be would be être, and gentil is nice or gentle. If you needed a noun, some people like to be a little bit, cynical here and say maybe in order to have a lot of friends, you need a lot of money. That's a terrible thing, but it's not true, I swear. Il faut, and then let's give an article noun, de l'argent. Article, noun. There we go. Okay? So you guys can pick what it is that you want to be doing. Just make sure that you're following the correct format and that you don't make a silly mistake on spelling il faut incorrectly. Next is the depuis pendant section. Here what we're doing is they give you an infinitive. They give you some sort of an activity, and you need to ask yourself, do you still do it? Or do you no longer do it? If you still do it, you want to conjugate the verb in the present tense, and you want to use depuis plus either a moment in time or a duration. If you no longer do this activity, then you need to use passé composé, which is 2 verbs. You need to use pendant and a duration. Remember that pendant cannot go with a moment in time. So for example, number 1, être étudiant à l'université, to be a student at the university. Okay, well, if you still do that, you want to be using present tense and depuis. So let's conjugate être for je suis, copy paste, étudiant for males or étudiante for females, à l'université. And then I'm going to pop in depuis. I used present tense and I'm still a student, or I'm speaking for you, but depuis, and then give either a year or an amount of time. So let's say that you were starting to be a student in 2020. You could either give that, or a duration would be something like un an, 1 year. Okay, example number 2, être étudiant or étudiante au lycée, in high school. Are you still a high schooler or no longer? Most of you, at least, are no longer a student in high school, so you're going to do passé composé and pendant. So let's do that. Let's do être and passé composé. Allez, parti, sorti, venu. I sing the list to myself. I find that it's not with être, so it's funny, but être is not with être. J'ai été. It's in irregular past participle. Copy paste. Étudiant for a guy, étudiante for a girl, au lycée. And I've used passé composé here, so I want to go with pendant. And tell me how long you were a student in high school. So in this case, most of you would probably say 4 years, 4 ans. Okay? So it really just depends on what is your personal experience. Some of you may have very different answers depending on your real life. Just make sure that if you use present, you're using depuis, and if you use passé composé, you're using pendant. Continuing, the negations section. Marlène and Lionel, brother and sister, are two very different people. Write the opposite of each statement. So you're given a statement and you are doing the opposite. We're going either from, in this case, negation to affirmative, but it can be the opposite way. You can be going from affirmative to negative. So you need to be familiar with the rules here. So like ne pas, sorry, I shouldn't have put that all the way over there. If you had some sort of affirmative and you're negative, typically in the past we've just had ne pas there, okay? Now we know that we've got some other options. We have ne plus, no longer, as being the opposite of encore, which means still. We have ne pas encore, not as the opposite of encore, but as the opposite of déjà. Déjà is already, and ne pas encore means not yet. Then we have the opposite. We've got ne jamais. If it's in passé composé, the opposite can be déjà. I've never done it. No, I've already done it. Versus if it's in any other tense, let's say present tense, we tend to put it with a frequency. If I've never done it, the opposite was, or if I never do it, the opposite is I always do it, or I often do it. So toujours, souvent, quelquefois, these are all rarement, rarely, parfois, sometimes. These are all frequency words, okay? We also have ne personne, no one, as being the opposite of quelqu'un, or tout le monde, someone, or everyone. And the opposite of ne rien being the negation form of quelque chose, something, or tout, which means all things. So you need to really have these clear as a table for yourself so that you know exactly what to use. So whatever you identify, you negate. Number 1, for example, Marlène prend souvent le train. Find the word that's going to become the opposite. In this case, it's frequency. I'm going to drop down and reuse all the same structures. So Lionel prend, wherever souvent was is where I'm going to put my negation. The opposite of souvent would be ne, goes before the verb, and jamais. Copy paste the rest. Le train. Watching out that if you're going from affirmative to the negative, you need to be conscious of articles changing. And actually when you go this direction too as well. Or I should say this direction. Okay? Articles changing, namely that if you had a un, une, des, or du, de la, de l'apostrophe, that would become de in the negation, or vice versa. If you had de in the negation, you're going to have to watch out and try to pick the right one over here. Let's see. Let me see if I can do... let's do this one, number 4. Lionel danse avec quelqu'un. Quelqu'un is my thing that I'm going to change into the opposite. Keep in mind that wherever that is where my negation is going to go. I've got my verb here, so I'm going to reuse my verb. I'm going to put my ne always before my first verb, and my negation wherever the original word was. So it's after the avec. The opposite of quelqu'un is ne personne. So Marlène ne danse avec personne. Number 3 here is a little bit tricky. Lionel has 2 DVD players, and it says Marlene has 1. So this is not a full negation, but rather the restriction. So the restriction looks like this. Let me put it in a different color. We have ne, que, that que could become Q-U apostrophe, and it is actually not, it doesn't have an opposite, but it equals to seulement, which is to say only. If you're seeing something where you're supposed to negate something here, right? So if you look at this, there's no negation in there. So I need to go towards the negative form, but I'm still left with an actual number here instead of a normal de, because de would be if I was doing a negation. So if that's what I'm trying to do here, I'm just trying to do the restriction, so I want to use the ne que form. So Marlène a, and then we've already got lecteur de DVD, and I'm trying to use ne que here. So na, que, and I've got to watch out, vowel, take off this E, and I have Marlène n'a qu'un lecteur de DVD. Okay? I'll leave those other two for you guys to try on your own. This last exercise is going to be a reading comprehension. It's not going to be this one per se, but you do want to, spend enough time. I would say maybe save 10 to 15 minutes for your reading comprehension exercise. You may want to set out a timer for yourself to do each exercise. Give yourself maybe 5 to 10 minutes per exercise. Depending on which one you think is going to be the hardest for you, and try to stick to it. And then if you need to, at the end, come back. Okay? Very best of luck, you guys. If you guys have any questions, of course, come and contact me.